Hello and welcome to On Point. I'm Thabie Sibanda. And today we'll be discussing the African-American man's experience in Hollywood, today specifically in the world of soap operas. Joining me today are two men who both work for the #1 daytime soap, The Young and the Restless. We'll be hearing about their experiences as African-American men in the television business. Herbie Weaver is a stage manager for the show. He has been with them for 22 years. Kristoff St. John plays the role of Neil Winters and has been a working actor since he was a child. Welcome, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Thabie.
Thank you.
So, please describe to me how you feel African-American men are portrayed on soap operas. Kristoff.
Well, Herbie, shall I take the lead on that? You want to start?
I think you should.
Well, let me ask Herbie this. Before I got to The Young and the Restless, how many black male leading characters did you see on the show, on Young and the Restless? Do you remember?
I remember two.
You remember two?
I remember two.
Okay. Nathan Purdie.
Nathan Purdie. And
John St. Elwood?
Yes.
Played Kong.
Yes.
Or no, that was...
He was before.
Right.
But those are the only two I think I remember.
Now, how were they portrayed on the soap opera?
How were they portrayed? Because I wasn't there.
Well, Nathan was an investigator. So, you know, that's pretty good for back, you know, in the 80s. He wasn't a
Pimp.
servant or something like that. So they were doing pretty good with that. And I believe, so was the other guy, was an FBI agent or something.
I think he was.
So they were portrayed pretty well, actually.
Although Nathan Purdie's nickname on the show was Kong, K-O-N-G. I'm not sure how we want to read into that, but if you ask me, I think King would go in front of Kong, which would mean something completely different. So again, I can't go back in the history. There was also another a black leading character on the show, and his name is Phil Morris, and he played also a private detective. But if we go into the history of the show, his character got dressed in white makeup, so it was the reverse of blackface. He went in white makeup, undercover, deep undercover, to infiltrate the Italian mob. And an Italian girl ends up falling in love with him while he's got the white face makeup on.
Wow.
Go figure.
Now, so you would say right now that they're portraying them in a positive manner. Is that correct to say that?
On our show, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I don't know if it was necessarily, I wasn't trying to lead towards that African-American males were portrayed negatively in the 80s and the 90s. You know, I got there to Young and the Restless in '91. My family exploded on the show. Within about, I'd say, a year to 2 years, they started adding arms onto this family, you know, with the kids and other characters. And yeah, we've had a pretty good run. Lately, it's been sort of tough to come by storyline, and I'm not exactly sure why, but maybe it's a sign of the times, you know. They've been very heavily concentrated on other storylines on the show other than mine. But, you know, I still show up, suit up, and do what I'm supposed to do.
Well, there was Mamie, the character who was the maid for the Abbotts. So, you know, that started for a long time, that ended up. But then they also had Esther, who was also a servant for another family, so it's the same thing.
Right, and then they had Miguel, who was a minority Mexican butler to Victor Newman. But you know what? Here's let's put into perspective, okay? There's very few characters on daytime or primetime television which have the cachet that some of the African-American characters on Young and the Restless have had. I play a CEO of a major corporation, this made-up major corporation, something along the lines of, let's say, a Microsoft. Okay, my wife on the show, or ex-wife, she dead now. She fell off the cliff. She died. Bye, Drusilla. But she played a model slash ballerina slash businesswoman. Right, and then Malcolm, he plays a photographer, a high-end fashion photographer. So these are roles that you don't really get to see black people playing that often. You know,
so you would say this is drastically different from the big screen or other television shows.
I don't know about drastically, but yeah, somewhat. I mean, especially on daytime, you don't find our characters on other daytime shows as often, you know, but I would never have had the chance to play a character for 20 years straight, playing a CEO of a company on any other show. Would not have happened.
Money family. Yeah. Prominent black money family.
Okay. Do you believe that African-American men are stereotyped, and if so, how?
Take it, Herbie. Take it away.
Yes. reason being, well, we don't have that many on our show, but what they try to cover, I think, is when we hire dailies. We may need an officer or a detective or something like that, and I think they're doing that to fill their we used minority void. So instead of hiring more and having regular on the show, they hire the dailies as minorities. You see a lot of Asians and African Americans in that aspect of the show.
What has been your experience with the stereotypes on the show?
Well, because I haven't been playing a stereotype, you know, in fact, I'm quite far from it. I've been observing other characters as they come and go. Todd Bridges played a ghetto, he was a thief, he was a hustler. Yep, there's a stereotypical character. I think his name was Juice on the show. There's another stereotypical name. This was, I believe, it was after O.J. Simpson and the whole, Rockingham crime drama got played out for everybody. So just the fact that the writers would name somebody Juice is a little off-kilter in my book. There have been a few occasions, my son on the show, Devon, at least my adopted son on the show, played by Brighton McClure, his mother was a crack addict. Is that a stereotype? Yeah. But you know what? I guess, they take dramatic license where they feel they should. And, that was just part of that storyline.
Now, why do you think these stereotypes still exist?
Look to the street.
Yeah, that's how they see it in the world. That's how they think it is. They don't see the other side.
Yeah, they're not really looking outside the box as much as they can or could. But again, having played this upscale, bougie character for as long as I have, but let me add, with a lot of soul and a lot of flavor, right? At least they've been aware enough to continue that, to showcase this very positive, role model image. At least for me, I can speak for me.
What bothers me is when they have the dialect of jive or whatever. Everybody hated that. That was wrong. Didn't work. It's uneducated. Now you see it in the writing.
Yeah.
So it's okay now, since it's became popular, I guess. So that kind of bothers me sometimes. I know you see it sometimes. You'll say, I'm not going to say that because it's silly. He's an educated. He went to Stanford.
That's right.
And they got him saying, something he would not say.
Or as I recall, being a part of a gang way back in the day, right? And climbing out of the gang and getting a hand up from, let's say, white America, and then getting into the business world. So that was a little, that put me off quite a bit. But, bottom line is there are some changes, just not enough. And I'm not sure the daytime is going to survive long enough to continue to see either A, stereotypes, or B, against the grain.
Okay. It's funny that you mentioned that because I believe today they announced that One Life to Live and All My Children are being canceled. Yeah. How do you feel that's going to affect the African-American male role in daytime soap operas?
That shouldn't change it one way or the other.
You don't think the roles will decrease because more of those actors from the other shows are going to start coming on to the Young Restless?
I think it'll be status quo and it'll come to a crashing halt. I don't think it's going to go up or down one way or the other. It's just not a good thing that's happened.
But you feel comfortable because you're working on the #1 daytime soap opera?
Not real comfortable. Not real comfortable.
Okay, now, Herbie, can you tell me how things work behind the scenes? What does it look like behind the scenes, what we don't see on TV in terms of your experience as an African-American male?
Oh, that's a different story. There are there's so many different departments behind the scenes. And when I first got to CBS, there were quite a bit of African Americans there. Now, a lot of them have retired, and there have been no new hires, not because they're not hiring minorities, but they don't want to hire anyone for staff anymore. But there's always been just a select few of African Americans. There's always been, because you got a camera crew, there was a few African Americans in there. You got the stage hands, there was a few there. So CBS, I think, they didn't shy away from from it as far as I was concerned. Now, you know, there's some people within the company that worked there that may not have been real happy one way or the other. But I don't think that swayed CBS one way or the other. I think they did okay hiring behind the scenes African or minorities.
And Thabie, you got to understand that he's talking about a particular union, Local 33.
Okay.
There's another local. What is it? Yeah, NABIT. What else?
IEBW.
Right, and these are unions that, you know, they all work out of CBS. That's where they get their employment. They're protected by the union. But if you're talking about African Americans behind the scenes at Young and the Restless, and let's say Bold and the Beautiful, I can only speak for my show. You know, I see it, it's pretty apparent in other shows, that it's a closed-off little circle, a little world, where they don't really want to hire anybody new. And again, I don't really think it has a lot to do with we don't want to hire minorities, black people, whatever. They're just not hiring that much. And when they do hire, then they're hiring within their little circle of friends. So that's how you can hear, you know, a news story about there are no black directors, writers, producers on Young and the Restless, or probably Bold and the Beautiful, or probably All My Children. You know what I'm saying? So it is a very closed-off little world that we live in there.
Okay. Now, I won't mention any names, but it's been reported that some actors who were previously on the show have accused some people behind the scenes of being racist. Is that true? What are your experiences with that?
Listen, let me take lead on that. There are people who have made accusations, and I can say it outright. I've worked with this person, and she played my wife on the show for quite some time. She's right in most, if not all, of what she says about her complaints with the lack of diversity behind the camera on our show. It's just the execution. It's the way that she's gone about it. She has implored unions like NAACP to step in and help sort of this cause. I'm all for that. I'd love to be a director, not necessarily on my show. You know, love to produce, I love to write. I think we need that. They just recently hired a lady, Susan Dansby. She was hired to a 6-week contract. I think they just gave her a full legitimate contract. Being an African-American writer, she'll have some ideas about what those of us that are African-American on the show should be saying. Maybe a little more flavor. But the bottom line is she's a good writer. And I think good writing is colorless, you know, and that's the bottom line. But, you know, she's, you know, my girl, Vicky, is hell-bent on trying to make some sort of change. You know, I know she wanted to produce on the show. There's nothing wrong with what she's done other than execution. That's all I can say about that.
That's been the one lack is in those higher positions, the directing, the producing. There's been no minorities in that aspect.
Do you feel like the way African-American male, or just African-Americans, period, how they're portrayed on screen will change if we had an African-American writer or a producer or director or someone owning the show who is African-American? Do you think it would change a lot?
It would change the business, as now everybody would, no. If a show does it, then they're good for them. But I don't think another show's going to go, oh, well, we better start. If they hired that person's probably really good, and there it is. I don't think it's going to start anything. I could be wrong about that.
Thabie, the almighty color is green. Green for dead presidents and money. If they feel that black people, writers, producers, directors, actors are going to improve a project and bring more audience members in, then damn it, they be doing it. You know what I'm saying? I can remember joining the cast of Young and the Restless, and within a very short period of time, I saw storylines on other soap operas popping up, African-American storylines, simply because our show was the most diverse soap opera on at that time. And we stayed like that for a full decade, even a little bit longer. It started tapering off. So, you know, we got a long way to go, though, you know, and I don't think there's going to be any show that's going to sit back and go, hey, we need to hire black people for behind the scenes. They're not going to do that. We have to keep plugging away. Tyler Perry's of the world, you know, he's done it. The Wayans are trying to do it. There's a whole lot of people out there who are trying to do it. We just need to, but we need our own studio. We have our own channel. We have BET. We got TV One, right? And luckily, BET has finally seen the light, and we don't have just music videos on there anymore. They're doing original content. That's what we need to do, and have our own product.
Has there ever, I know you play Neil Winters, has there ever been a time when you completely disagreed with the storyline or the way they were describing Neil Winters, because it was not what you thought it should be as an African-American male?
Well, yeah, there's been a few scuffles. I mean, I never really fought with anybody. Luckily for me, there's been a couple of really good executive producers. One of them, Ed Scott, who was one of my mentors in the beginning with daytime television anyway, who was pretty decent about giving a lot of latitude towards the character. No, the only thing that I can remember in recent memory was that I completely disagreed that my character should have ever come from the streets. That they wanted to put another black man who's gone through the system, wore gang colors, and then got the help up. So that was the only storyline that I remember vocalizing, hey, look, I really don't feel comfortable with this. Let's just have Neil be a smart, educated man, and he worked his way up by himself. Not everybody come from the street. In fact, most of us don't. Just happens to be that that's more drama. To be able to say, I ran around with a gun and I pointed at people. I was a gang member. That makes for good drama. Not for this man, no.
Well, I know you've been working in this business for 22 years, and you've been an actor since you were a little kid. So
yeah.
You've worked on other, productions. Has it been different working on the other productions, like in terms of the way it is for African American males?
Has it been different working on other productions, being an African American, watching African American content? Yes and no. I mean, when I work on an all-black show like Martin or Jamie or any of the sitcoms that I was doing, I just worked Everybody Hates Chris. There's a general feeling of we and togetherness, and that we're trying to promote this product that is not just meant for we and us. It's meant for everyone, trying to break the racial divide. I've worked on projects that have been completely divided. I worked on a project in Mississippi where the white actors were given the bigger dressing rooms and the bigger hotel rooms, and the black actors were not. And, it was very noticeable, but that was Deep South. There are places, forget about entertainment and television, there are places that we can't even go into, the three of us, after dark in this country. If we do, we may not come out. That's the truth. So there's a lot that we got to work on. It's not just on television, it's everything, it's society in general.
I worked on a Steve Harvey show, and it was, they were African American from top to bottom. And it was a different feel. It was, but it was the same. You know what I mean? It was still a family. We were all trying to get the same product out, and everybody, the writers were black, African American, the director, but they still got out the same thing. So it can be done. It can be done. We just need the opportunities.
Okay. Now, I know there's not a lot of African-American males on the show, but do you sometimes feel a responsibility as the representative of your ethnicity or race to represent that person?
Me personally?
Yeah, or you.
Well, me, yeah. I mean, listen, when I get stopped in the street and people tell me how much they love the show, and they say, hey, you know what, though? I really appreciate the fact that I've been watching you on the show for however many years. You wear a nice suit. I have kids tell me that, man, you that dude in the suit. Yeah, that's right. So maybe you want to wear that suit one day. Maybe you want to get into business. That means something for me. Yeah, I do take a lot of responsibility on my shoulders. And at one time I was really, the solo cat in the ship, when after Shamar left, after Randy Brooks, Nathan Purdie, Adam Lazar-White, Ben Guillory, all these cats, man, they up and left. And so now we have Darius McCrary, Brighton McClure, myself, Evan. I don't remember Evan's name. He's playing an attorney. Yeah, I mean, there's a nice, mixture. It's just I don't think we're quite getting enough screen time. There needs to be a little bit more given. For me, behind the scenes, I just have to do my job and do it well. And keep my nose clean. I get that. I say that because that's what my dad telling me that, because he was in the business early on too, and he got me in. He said, just you do your job, you do it well, and you keep your nose clean, and then in the process you can maybe pull somebody up behind you without actually, stirring the pot like when you were talking earlier. But just by me doing a good job and doing what I'm supposed to do, that itself should help. Thabie, here's the sad thing. If we were to remove Herbie Weaver from our set, there really would be no African American influence coming from, and he's part of the directing team. When they go up and receive the Emmy, Herbie would stand up and receive the Emmy with them, part of the directing team. If he was not there, it would really be a lack of diversity. And that in itself is a big, big story, you know, and maybe that has to do with the fact that African-American males aren't getting their local 33 cards, they're not applying for them, there's more, you know, white, the majority are going after those jobs. But, you know, that's what has to change. Youngsters have to see that, hey, I can do that job. I could do what Herbie Weaver is doing. I can be a director. I can be a writer. I can be a producer. You know, there's a great wealth of talent out there who are not working and employed on our show, on any show for that matter.
Now, do you think that the experience for African-American women is very different compared to African-American male?
That's a good question. What do you think, ma'am?
Do they have it easier or harder?
I think definitely harder. I think females, period, have it harder. And then African-American female, I think it's even worse.
Well, yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, if you look at sitcom stars, you know, there have been more males, the Jamies and the Martins and the, you know, Steve Harveys of the world, maybe in the comedy world. I don't know. There's been some incredible black actresses in our time, you know, but if I had to bet money on it, I would say that there's more black males working in the industry. You know, the token African-American role on CSI or Criminal Minds or, you know, they usually filled by a black male, usually. So that's it, yeah.
So you feel like they have to fill their quota and then they're done?
Speechless. Speechless.
All right, so no comment. All right, what do you think that the viewers want to see? Do you think they like what they're seeing right now? I mean, I know you said that some people come up to you, they're really appreciative of what role you're playing, but as a whole, just in general, like not even just Young and the Restless, but also in Hollywood, period.
They want to see more who they are. Not the ghetto thug. They want to see who they are, which is an educated person working hard every day. The lawyers, you know, the doctors, they do the same thing. They would like to see that also on the screen, and they don't see it.
Thabie, I think that they want to see a mixture of representation of themselves, those who are not in, you know, those blue or white collar jobs. They want to see a good sort of evolvement of where they've come from, what they're striving to do. You can't just put one side of the fence up, you know, and to this day I still have dreams of putting on a black soap opera, you know, an all African American with some, you know, white people and Asian people, Mexican people involved, but a black soap opera. You know, and cover all bases, all angles. One of the problems with the show that I did called Generations was that it just, even though it was diverse, it was a little wacky, man. My dad on the show, he owned an ice cream business. He was the ice cream king. I knew right then when I heard about his job, I went, yeah, okay, that's going to be a little strange. You know, but definitely representation all across the board is what we're looking for.
Okay. All right. I don't know if you know, but The Game was canceled, then came back on. Do you feel like certain things like that where the African Americans' voice was heard and they responded, do you think if more African American people spoke up and said, look, this is what I want to see, do you think that the writers on the show, the producers, will actually change and do that? Like show that? You don't?
Me personally, I don't think so. I mean, you can, you know, write to the networks and to the studios all you want and campaign all you want for certain things. But I don't think at the end of the day you're going to get a show on air or a show to come back, you know, that's already been popular and get it to air again. I really, that's just my belief, though.
So you think what happened with The Game that was canceled on the CW, then went on to BET, that was just like a luck? Never usually happens.
Well, what did I say earlier about you know, the ultimate color is green, and so I'm sure after the you know, accountants poured over what was still to be made off the show, how we could improve the show by, you know, taking people's salaries down, that it made sense for BET to buy the show. shows that are canceled are always up for sale on other networks. They can buy them. Just because they're canceled doesn't mean that they have to go away forever. You know, so I would imagine that maybe there was an outpouring from the audience, which you're saying that there was, but I think it had more to do with the financial end of it, and they thought it made sense for them. That's my belief.
Okay. Now, do you see this changing, like, for the better? Herbie, what do you think?
It'll be a slow process. Slow process. It can happen.
And what are the steps that would need to be taken in order to have that happen?
People that are in positions now have to make the moves.
Like move out or move in? Like, or just
Both.
make a change?
Yeah, both.
Both. If you think about what's on air right now, let's focus on one thing right now. What primetime African-American drama is there on television today? Bam, Thabie, what do you think? Is there one?
I guess Everybody Hates Chris, maybe.
That's a drama? Is that a drama or a comedy? Kind of more of a comedy.
Comedy.
Right. So where are we represented drama-wise on primetime?
It's a good question.
Okay. The reason why is because there are very few African-American showrunners. They come along every so often. Yvette Lee Bowser, who did, she was doing mostly sitcoms, though. In fact, all sitcoms. Her name escapes me. Grey's Anatomy.
Shonda Rhimes.
Yes, Shonda Rhimes. There's a classic example of someone who is now in a position of power to take an idea, pitch it to the network, and get a show off the ground. You know, and she's doing very diverse work. It's not just African-American stuff. But that's what we need. Tyler Perry's, you know, people like that to step it up. And even more than what Tyler's doing. He's doing some comedy and some kind of crazy stuff, and I enjoy some of it, you know, but...
Can you tell me what has been your favorite storyline of Young and the Restless so far?
My favorite storyline to date would have to be, honestly, the whole divorcing the wife potentially and spreading my wings and kind of trying to get out of Newman and, you know, being, you know, I was dressing differently. I was just, for the first time in a long time on the show, I was able to sort of just show that I wasn't, you know, the suit and tie guy. And the problems with
Drinking
the wife.
a bit much.
Drinking, yeah, I was an alcoholic on the show. I could be one in real life, though. You don't know that. You don't know. That was one of my favorite ones, too.
I like the Newman family fight. The dad and the two brothers and the wives and the ex-wives.
Is this a recent storyline?
Yeah, they're really battling it out right now.
Thank you, Herbie, for joining me. Thank you, Kristoff. And this is On Point. Thank you for watching. Now, do you have a lot of input on what your character says or what their storyline's supposed to be?
Sure. Every day I come in and write my own stuff.
You can't, like, hey, writers, I'd appreciate this.
Marina Rena Bell is pretty good about listening to storyline stuff, but hey, listen, if it ain't on the page and ain't on the stage, I'm not a writer, I'm an actor, so I'm supposed to stick to my acting, and that's what I try to do.